Alan Watts had this way of cutting through the noise, not by shouting over it, but by reminding you that maybe the noise was never real to begin with. In a world constantly screaming do more, be more, achieve more, Watts offered the quiet, radical idea that you already are everything you need to be, that the striving, the chasing, the endless self-improvement spiral might just be a brilliant illusion. At the core of his message is something deeply uncomfortable for our productivity-obsessed culture: let go. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one, and not in the throw your hands up and give up kind of way. Watts didn't advocate passivity. He wasn't saying don't care. What he said over and over was that life isn't a problem to be solved. It's music to be danced to. And if you're only focused on getting to the end of the song, you're missing the point entirely. So many of us are walking around believing we're incomplete. That happiness, success, peace, it's all out there, just a few more accomplishments away. But Watts flips that entirely. He says, what if the only thing standing between you and everything you want is the belief that you don't already have it? That belief, that subtle, constant feeling of not enough, isn't just exhausting. It's deceptive. It tricks you into performing your life instead of living it. You start acting for something, for approval, for validation, for permission. But Watts says no. He says, act from something, from fullness, from wholeness, from the deep, often forgotten, knowing that you're already complete. And here's where things get wild. He explains that the more you let go of control, of need, of resistance, the more life actually starts to give. Not because the universe suddenly likes you more, but because you've stopped getting in your own way. You've stopped grabbing at life with desperation and started moving with it. He calls it alignment. Not just a spiritual buzzword, but a lived reality. When your inner state reflects peace, trust, and presence, the world starts responding in kind. It's like the external world is an echo chamber, and whatever you're broadcasting internally comes bouncing back to you. Now, that doesn't mean you sit on your couch and wait for miracles. Watts wasn't about magical thinking. He was about real inner transformation, about acting as if what you desire is already real, and not as a trick to get what you want. But because when you realize you're already whole, your actions naturally change. They become clearer, calmer, more intentional. You stop chasing and start expressing. You stop clinging and start creating. He used music a lot as a metaphor, because music isn't something you rush through to get to the end. It's about the movement, the unfolding, the rhythm. Life, he said, is exactly the same. It's not a ladder with a prize at the top. It's a dance, and the moment you try to rigidly control the steps, you miss the music. And that's the paradox Watts loved to play with. That surrender, true surrender, is the most powerful thing you can do. Not because it fixes your problems, but because it dissolves the idea that something's broken. It puts you back into flow. It turns life from a battle into a collaboration. You're not forcing anymore. You're co-creating. And when you really get that, it changes everything. You stop asking, what do I need to do to get what I want? And start living from, who am I really? When I stop pretending I'm not already enough. And from that place, your actions carry weight. Your energy shifts. Opportunities find you not because you're chasing them, but because you're magnetic to them. That's what Watts meant by, the more you let go, the more life gives you. Not in a reward-punishment framework, but because when you release the need to control every outcome, you create the space for miracles to land. And let's be honest, that kind of letting go, it's hard. We're conditioned to grip tight, to hustle, to measure everything. But Watts says, what if the very act of clenching is what's blocking you? He invites you to trust the unknown, not as a last resort, but as your default. To walk forward without needing every detail. To live as if life is already supporting you even before you see the proof. Because proof follows belief, not the other way around. And when you finally surrender to that rhythm, when you stop holding your breath and start breathing with life, you begin to feel something unfamiliar but true. Freedom. Not the loud, rebellious kind, but the deep, grounded kind. The kind that comes from knowing that nothing out there defines you, that you're not missing anything, that your worth isn't up for negotiation, that your being is the gift. Alan Watts didn't promise that life would get easier, but he did offer something more valuable, a different lens. One where you don't have to earn your place in the universe. One where you're not separate from life, but of it, in it, essential to it. And when you live from that, everything changes. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next. And you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Not because you made life behave, but because you finally stopped resisting what was always true. Go, and let life meet you there. If this hit you in a way that words can't quite explain, like deep truth you forgot you knew, go ahead and like the video. Share it with someone who's been gripping too tight. Subscribe if you want more of these moments of clarity, and drop a comment below. What's one thing you're ready to let go of so life can finally flow in? You already have it all. Now, can you trust yourself enough to receive it? Alright, let's go deeper, because Alan Watts wasn't just talking philosophy. He was describing a way of being that, let's be honest, most of us were never taught. We were taught to grind, to plan, to compare, to chase certainty like it was the holy grail. But Watts quietly stepped into that mental noise and said something outrageous. What if you already are what you're trying so hard to become? And that right there, that's the entire collapse of the self-help hamster wheel. Because the second you start operating from the belief that you're incomplete, you're trapped. No matter what you achieve, it's never enough. You'll always be hunting the next fix, the next goal, the next external gold star to prove that you're finally there. But Watts said, there is no there. There's just here, now. And the more you resist it, the more disconnected you become from life itself. He called out the absurdity of living as if we're separate from the world. Like we're these isolated egos trying to dominate or fix something that we're already a part of. You're not on the outside trying to make things happen, you're the happening itself. That flips the script. When you really get that, it's not about giving up on ambition. It's about recognizing where your ambition is coming from. Is it rooted in fear? In lack? In trying to earn your existence? Or is it flowing from a deeper truth that you are already whole, already connected? And now, you get to express that wholeness? Because when you stop resisting the present moment, when you stop arguing with reality, a strange thing happens. Life stops feeling like a struggle. You've probably felt it before, right? That sense of effortlessness. Those days when things just click, when the timing is perfect, when opportunities land in your lap seemingly out of nowhere. That's flow. That's alignment. That's what Watts was pointing to. But we don't live there, do we? We visit. Briefly. Then the mind kicks back in. Did I do enough today? Why haven't I achieved more? When will it finally happen? And just like that, you're back in the maze. Watts said that's the trap of the mind. It thrives on separation. It creates problems so it can solve them. It convinces you that you're lacking, so you keep feeding it goals and deadlines, trying to outrun the discomfort it creates in the first place. He wasn't against thought, but he knew its limits. He said, the mind is a beautiful tool, but a terrible master, and until you stop believing everything it says, you'll never experience peace. You'll just be busy. The truth, according to Watts, is shockingly simple. You're not lacking anything. Let that sink in for a minute. Because it's not just a nice affirmation. It's a radical shift in identity. You are not a project to fix. You are not broken. You are not waiting to be complete. You are already the whole damn thing. Not in some abstract, spiritual, bypassing way, but in reality. The same energy that forms galaxies is moving through your lungs right now. That's not poetic fluff. That's biology. That's physics. That's truth. So what happens when you actually live from that knowing? You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop bending over backwards to make people like you. You stop obsessing over timelines. You start showing up differently, quieter, stronger, more trusting, more powerful, not in the dominating sense, but in the peaceful, unshakable sense. You know who you are, and because of that, life starts reorganizing around that energy. And yeah, this is where people get uncomfortable, because we've been trained to believe that effort equals worth, that struggle equals virtue, that if you're not grinding, you're lazy. But Watts turns that on its head. He said, effort born from anxiety is wasted motion, but action rooted in presence? That's where magic happens. When you act from fullness, you're not attached to outcomes. You're not trying to control every detail. You're not holding your breath. You're open, receptive, in sync. And it's not passive. It's powerful. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving into the current that was already carrying you. Watts used to say that life is like swimming. The more you try to force it, the more you sink. But if you trust the water, you float. Same with reality. Fight it, and it fights back. Flow with it, and it starts carrying you places you never could have planned. And still our minds want proof, evidence, reassurance. But here's the paradox he loved to highlight. You'll never get external confirmation of your completeness until you believe it first. The world doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your frequency. You could say all the affirmations in the world, but if your core belief is, I'm not enough, life will mirror that. Not as punishment, but as feedback. And this is where the shift becomes real. When you start embodying your inner wholeness, not performing it, but actually being it, everything changes. You don't just attract different results. You interpret everything differently. Challenges stop being threats. Delays stop being failures. Other people's success stops being a measuring stick. You start trusting the pace of your own life. You start recognizing synchronicity instead of calling it coincidence. And yeah, it's still messy. Watts never said this path was smooth. But it's alive. It's honest. It's free. And in a world obsessed with constant doing, that freedom can feel like rebellion. It's choosing to breathe while everyone else is holding their breath. It's choosing stillness in a culture of urgency. It's choosing trust in a world run by doubt. Because the real journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about shedding the layers of pretense, fear, and conditioning that convinced you were anything less than whole. And once you let go, once you stop waiting for permission, you realize life was never holding anything back from you. It was waiting for you to show up. Not the version you thought you needed to be, but the one that was already enough, already radiant, already capable of dancing with life exactly as it is. So where does that leave you? You could keep striving, keep pushing, keep trying to bend life into something manageable. Or, you could release your grip, stop holding your breath, and finally start trusting that you don't have to force what's already flowing. Let go of the illusion that you're behind. Let go of the myth that you need fixing. Let go of the voice that says, not yet. And let life meet you in the now. That's where it always was. That's where it always will be. Let's sit in this a little longer, because Alan Watts wasn't offering comfort. He was offering a challenge. A bold, inconvenient truth that undoes everything we've been trained to believe about life, success, and control. And the truth is this: the more tightly you grip, the more life slips through your fingers. Not because the world is cruel, not because the universe is testing you, but because reality doesn't operate on demand. It flows, it unfolds, and the second you try to pin it down, you remove yourself from its rhythm. It's like trying to grab water with a clenched fist. It spills every time. But the open palm, that's what holds the most. This is what Watts meant when he said, the more you let go, the more life gives you. He wasn't selling some vague spiritual idea. He was describing the mechanics of alignment, of trust, of inner resonance with life itself. Let's break that down. We've all been taught to control, to plan every detail, to map out 5-year strategies, to force progress. And yes, there's a place for structure, but when structure becomes rigidity, becomes resistance. And resistance always creates friction. Watts pointed out something crucial. Most of our suffering isn't from the events in our lives, it's from our resistance to them. We say, this shouldn't be happening. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. That wasn't the plan. And in doing so, we create a war inside ourselves. A war between reality and our idea of how reality should be. And spoiler, reality always wins. That gap, the one between how things are and how we think they should be, is the birthplace of stress, anxiety, fear, even depression. But Watts says, when you collapse that gap, when you stop arguing with what is, something incredible happens. You start living with life, not against it. This isn't passivity, it's presence. It's the deep, embodied understanding that what's unfolding right now is not a mistake. That even the delays, the breakdowns, the redirections, they're part of the music. They are the melody. And when you stop trying to fast forward to the chorus, you start hearing the beauty of each note. But here's the uncomfortable part. Letting go requires trust. And for most of us, trust is terrifying. Because trusting means you're not in charge. It means you're not calling all the shots. It means the mind, your most loyal control freak, has to sit down and shut up for a minute. That's why surrender feels impossible for so many. Because it asks you to give up the illusion of certainty. And most of us would rather cling to a miserable certainty than open to an uncertain peace. Watts knew this. He said, the fear of letting go is actually the fear of realizing how little we were ever in control to begin with. But once you cross that threshold, once you accept that you were never meant to micromanage the universe, everything softens. You breathe deeper. You stop obsessing over outcomes. You become more curious than controlling. And paradoxically, that's when the good stuff starts showing up. Opportunities you didn't force. Connections you didn't chase. Ideas that weren't born from panic, but from presence. Because letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop straining. You stop acting from fear. You stop negotiating with reality. You start showing up fully and then stepping back. You give your best and then release the outcome. You live now without waiting for life to start later. And here's where it gets profound. He believed you are not separate from the world around you. You are not some isolated self stuck inside a skin bag, trying to figure life out. You are life. The same intelligence that grows trees and moves the tides is beating your heart right now, without your effort, without your control. Let that land. You are not here to force reality into submission. You're here to dance with it, to listen to its rhythm, to move when it moves, to rest when it rests, to let go. Not after everything works out, but before. Because that's real faith. Not waiting for proof, but acting from truth. And truth says, you are already enough. You are already whole. You are already where you're meant to be. When you live from that knowing, life responds. Not always instantly, not always in the way you plan, but always with precision. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect. Watts never promised that. There will still be storms. But when you're aligned, when you're surrendered, the storms don't define you. They move through you, and you remain rooted, grounded in trust. Centered in being, free from the illusion that something out there is missing. This is the invitation to live without waiting, not waiting for a job title, or a relationship, or a dollar amount, or a validation that finally says, you made it. You already made it. You're here. You're breathing. You're alive. Watts would ask, isn't that enough? Because from that place of enoughness, you begin to live differently. Not for applause, not to prove, not to perform, but to express, to create, to play, like music, like dance, like life itself. So where does this leave you? You could keep reaching, keep gripping, keep chasing the idea that someday, when everything lines up just right, then you'll finally feel peace. Or you could stop, right now, and remember that peace isn't at the end of the road. It is the road. It's here. It's always been here. It was just waiting for you to let go. So if this stirred something in you, if it reminded you of something you forgot you knew, then like the video. Share it with someone who's ready to stop striving and start living. Subscribe if you want more of these raw, real reflections. And leave a comment below. What's one thing you're ready to surrender, not in defeat, but in trust? Because sometimes, the greatest strength isn't finally letting go.